Welcome to From Loneliness to Overflow with Matina. I'm your host, a holistic healing coach, divorce recovery coach, and a passionate advocate for personal growth and your guide on the journey to healing. This podcast is for those who are struggling with the feelings of loneliness, disconnection, feeling stuck, and who are ready to discover their inner potential and live a life overflowing with love and connection. Inside, we're going to explore the path from pain to transformation, bridging the gap between loneliness and abundance through heartfelt conversations, spirituality, energy work, and self-awareness. So let's get started on this soulful journey together. Welcome to another episode From Loneliness to Overflow with Matina. Today's guest is a soul whose roots go deeper and wider than anything and anyone can see. And oftentimes when we come to this earth with such a big mission on heart, we sadly go through a lot of turmoil to really awaken ourselves. When we spoke for the first time, I know I had so many chills over my body, and it was just such a divine connection that you just know, like, okay, there is an energetic shift happening here, and to lean in even more. So thank you, Nadine, for saying yes to this podcast and being willing to share your story.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited for the listeners to hear what your take is on your journey so far, but also really what resonates and what is now seeping in with like this deep known wisdom, if you will, that allows you to carry that overflow such at heart and know that this is exactly where you need to be. But before we dive into any of that, please introduce yourself for our listeners.
Yeah, so my name is Nadine Perry. I am an intuitive counselor. So I kind of live in this liminal space between spirituality and talk therapy or psychotherapy. So I have used a lot of my personal life and my personal trauma to be able to bring that into my work. And it just feels super powerful to be able to take the story, that I've traveled and bring it into context in somebody else's story. And then those two stories come together and things get taken away from, for both parties. Because I think it's funny, when somebody comes into my therapy room, they think they're getting therapy, but I'm also getting therapy. So it's just a really beautiful thing. I work for Capillary Wave Community, which is a nonprofit in Burlington. So I am the intuitive counselor there, as well as I just took on the executive director of Capillary Wave Women.
Exciting things ahead. And I'm sure we'll touch upon the power of capillary wave and what it does exactly. However, I really want to start with this deep question, which is really rooted in your own journey. So when it comes to loneliness or disconnection, what would you say was your catalyst moment that has led you now into overflow, but in that moment did not really feel that way?
That is such a that's such a big question for me, because I've had so many canon events, is what I like to call them, in my life, that where I just feel like creator or universe was just like, nope, we didn't get that right. So let's kind of course correct. And I think it's so beautiful that the universe knows me so well that I learn very well through opposition. So the more resistance that comes up against me sometimes is the easier it makes me for me to learn the lesson, which is pretty backwards, I guess, in terms of some people's journeys. But for me, it's been the most perfect journey in terms of just getting from that place of like such loneliness to seeing those canon events. And then one at a time, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to sit with this. Oh, okay, I'm going to sit with this. So I would say it wasn't until probably my late 30s, that I was kind of like the big aha, that I was like, oh, okay. Oh, now I get it. And that was, the sense of these things didn't happen to me, they happened for me.
that one little sentence, that actually word, that one little word that you changed from two to
Hmm.
four
Hmm.
really allows you to look at the whole situation from a different perspective.
Yes.
But let's go to that last moment, that last big aha moment in
Hmm.
your 30s. Do you
Hmm.
feel open to share more about that and how that led you into shifting that dynamic of, oh, okay, this didn't happen to me, but it happened for me?
Yeah, of course. So before I start with that, I wanted to say something which is a little ode to myself in a sense. I love hero stories. So like Marvel, DC, like I grew up with that stuff. And this morning I was kind of sitting with, just a thought because I was like, oh, like today is my opportunity to tell my origin story. So I was just sitting with it and I was like, every soul that comes to earth has an origin story, a moment, like every hero that sets them on the path to becoming who they really need to be. And this is the story that called me into mine. So my canon event, the last one that really, really brought me into myself back home was 5 years ago. My mom was put into the hospital. She checked herself into the hospital. She has a long history of borderline personality disorder and bipolar. And she had gone through a marriage that didn't work out for her. And relationship seemed to be a trigger in that, which is typical for borderline personality disorder. So what had happened is she became suicidal. And unfortunately, this has been something that she's battled throughout her life. So she went into the hospital, and it was the first time that she went into the hospital that I wasn't mad because you can imagine growing up as a child and having a parent, that's suicidal. There's a lot of guilt, shame, misunderstanding, anger, frustration, all those levels of feelings that kind of come with that. So this time I wasn't mad, and I was kind of like, okay, that's different. What's different about this? And I had realized when I went to see her and I was sitting in front of her, and I mean, she wasn't well. And I'm quite compassionate. Like, I've been through a lot with my mom, and there's been a long history between us of abuse. But I found that place of compassion. So I was sitting in front of her, and I was just looking at her, and something inside me was just like, she's been hurt. And I was able at that point to see that little girl that she was and accept it. And in that, it almost caused this domino effect of accepting that everything happened for me and not to me, and that I was not the victim in her story, and I was not, the villain. I got to accept all those things, and it felt like this weird moment in time where like all these timelines kind of came together at once. And I was just like, whoa. So I left that day, and I was going to stay at her place because I didn't know how long she was going to be in the hospital this time. So I just sat and, I spoke to a few friends, and I just felt this shift inside that was like, okay, you know what? Everyone's doing the best they can with what they have. And I used to hate that saying. When people said it to me, I would just look at them like, no, people can do better. And I was just so argumentative when it came to that. But it was just that reckoning and understanding of, just like I said, all those timelines merging, and me just understanding that it happened for her, it happened for me. And it got me to the moment where I was able to stand in my power and be the one to look back on my ancestry and my ancestors and just quietly whisper, like, it stops with me.
Ooh, there is such a profoundness to see your mom and not see your mom, but see a soul.
Hmm.
You didn't see the role anymore, you saw a pure soul. And then how ironic for you to sit in her home and to come to the conclusion it stops with me.
Yeah, it was seeing someone as a soul after being through so much trauma with them. It's so difficult. I have people come in to see me all the time, and one of the biggest issues that I deal with a lot is parental trauma. And it's just, hearing these stories of hurt and anger and frustration. And like I said, that misunderstanding of seeing the person as the enemy.
Hmm.
And then when you peel back that layer and you're able to look at the soul, you begin to understand so much more about yourself, about them, about life. So it's just this, like I said, it's like just all those dimensions coming together, like the multiverse of madness, just everything just going, together. And you're just like, wow. And then what's interesting about that is once you have that canon event and you've seen it once, you can't unsee it. So in other people, you start to see it and you see it in yourself, and it just becomes this beautiful cascade of healing that happens, right?
I'm so grateful that you work with people and allow them to see that too. Because if our own journey, our own misery, our own teachings, our own lessons really become a guide into the work that we do and how we show up and how we believe that if I can heal, and I'm using the word heal very loosely. Healing doesn't mean like I've made it on the other side of the mountain. This is great. Now it's all smooth riding. That's not what healing is, people. But really allowing the past, if you will, to go to rest,
Mhm.
to allow that mountain of guilt and blame and shame and pain to be taken off your shoulders and be like, not today.
Yeah. Yeah. It took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I always knew I wanted to help people. But what's interesting is like the universe didn't give me the role in which I really wanted to help people until I was ready to actually help people. So I found that funny too. Like I struggled throughout my career and I kind of, went across social work to try and see where I fit. But yeah, creator knew like I wanted to either run a not-for-profit or I wanted to be the director of a nonprofit. And as I was moving along in my healing journey, it was like doors just started to open up, and I'm just so grateful, at this point in my life that I can take all those experiences and not be in misery or pain and frustration, but to use those things to help other people. Because it's interesting the comment you made, people walk into my office and they're like, "So how long is it going to take me to heal?" And I'm being who I am as a person. I kind of giggle a little bit and I'm like, wow, I mean, not until the day you're facing upward. Like your work is to do this until you're gone from this place. And I think that's what the catalyst is for us leaving is when we've gotten to to that last, point that we've learned as much as we can, or we learned what we needed to in this lifetime, depending on your beliefs, then that's kind of where we go back and return home. Right. So I'm super grateful. I'm really, really grateful.
It is mind boggling to me how. So, okay, I'm going to step back a little bit. There's a lot that you're sharing, Nadine, that we can uncover, if you will, to really dive deep into. When it comes to healing, there's this notion of belief that it is something I have to go through once and it will be done. I will never,
Mm-hmm.
ever have to deal with that part of me ever again.
Mm-hmm. That's a silver bullet.
Right? Which, in your profession, but also in your own experience, what would you say healing truly is?
That's a big one to unpack. I don't necessarily think there's one definition that I could give, that would really encompass everything that healing is. But what I can tell you is this is healing to me is the journey of being able to go inside yourself. Because what's interesting to me about society and the community and, the world at large is that we're so externalized. Everything pulls us out of ourselves, TV, social media, you name it. And then what's interesting to me is we don't take the time to sit and actually like look inside ourselves. And healing to me is when you can take those moments and really just look inside yourself. And the second part I would say to that is when you feel uncomfortable and you are in discomfort emotionally, that is like the roadmap to how you need to heal. And I think it's really fascinating to me because when you look around, we're such a society that's ensconced in comfort. Everything is about comfort. Everything's about convenience. I can get this now. I can do this now. I can have this. And, I can be warm. I don't have to be cold. I can be, like, it's so multifaceted at this point. But, like, what if you actually looked at discomfort as being, like I said, the roadmap to where you needed to be? Because I tell my clients all the time, where your greatest discomfort is where your greatest healing is. But most people are full of fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, and it just prevents them from being able to sit with that.
Mhm.
Right. And it makes them scared to actually look inside. And what I've learned in my journey and what I try to share with people is like, listen, the thought of you being uncomfortable and doing the healing is more scary a lot of the time, okay, than the actual healing itself. Right. And if we really like think about that again, right, it's the thought of healing and what we might have to go through that is more scary to us most of the time than our actually healing, which is crazy to me.
Mhm. It's the I've seen it over and over with my clients as well, where it's literally the story that we have played in our heads and our minds over and over and over again. And we're
Hmm.
almost afraid or ashamed to acknowledge it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to remember if you're acknowledging it, then you have to be, digging into it like an archaeologist. That calls you into the light of being like, okay, now we're started. Now we're gonna do this, and it's so truly beautiful when someone can come into that reckoning of like just understanding. Like I said, it's the discomfort.
Mhm.
Lean into it, right? Like, I think it's funny because creator has always given me, like I said, that piece of opposition. So I learn best through opposition. So creator's like, okay, I'm just going to give you what you need. And it's insane to me because it's put me in so much discomfort and so much fear. And I don't claim to be, the bravest person. But what I can tell you is that my courage and resilience are like, if we're talking video games, like level 10, like, or level 99. But but it doesn't mean I don't get scared. It doesn't mean that I don't feel discomfort still. I still battle that sometimes. But I think as we take this journey and as we do each piece of our journey and each piece of our story starts to fill in, then we gain more resilience. Like that video game reference, you kind of like you build your health, you build your emotional intelligence, you build those things in, and then you get to a point at some point where you kind of look back in the hindsight, like you're talking about, in your podcast, where it's that kind of canon event where you're just like, whoa, that all just came together and I'm just like mind blown right now.
Yes, and it is in those moments where we have a choice. Because even
Hmm.
in that moment where you didn't see your mom, but you actually saw a soul, you had a choice. You were given a choice.
Hmm. Yeah.
You could have given that same experience a completely different meaning.
Well, and I have, like, let's talk about that for a moment. So, going back in my history with her, it requires me to delve a little deeper. And to be honest with you, and I think I shared this with you before, I've never really told my story completely to anyone. People get snippets of it or they hear pieces of it, but I've never really actually shared my whole story. One, because I didn't want to hurt my mom. As much as I've been through with her, it's never my aim to actually hurt somebody because people are doing the best they can with what they have. And then two, because I wasn't ready. I had to get to the point where I actually could, like I said, accept that it happened for me, not to me. So if we go back and we look at, the history with my mom, like even in utero, my mom was like really stressed out, really upset, really frustrated. So my first experience of the world in utero was just like a lot of negativity and a lot of feelings of like being scared and afraid and anxious and not sure if she wanted me, and that was the first experience of my life. And then when I actually came her side, it was a lot of impatience, loathing, hatred, because she wanted to have me. She wanted to have me because she wanted something to love her because she hadn't been loved. And I quickly learned throughout my childhood that that was the journey that I was on, is that I needed to learn how to love her, and I also needed to learn how to love myself without anybody else supporting me, which was like really hard. So I don't know what everybody else believes, but like, man, before I was coming back through in this lifetime, I must have been like, I need to really understand what love is. So I just gave myself the ultimate lessons. So it was interesting because my mom and I didn't get along at all from when I was young. I wouldn't breastfeed from her. I refused it constantly. I wouldn't sleep. I would stay awake literally for days on end. And it was a really weird dynamic. There's a lot of anger from my mom that I was crying a lot. And she did some pretty mean things to me because I was crying as a baby and into my toddlerhood. And she wasn't there for me a lot. She had a lot of stuff going on mentally and, she didn't have a lot of support. So she wanted to spend time with like her friends or who she thought, was her support network, which put me in a lot of dangerous situations. I remember my mom one year having a conversation with me. And it's interesting to me because my origin story has come to me in pieces because I don't remember my story. It's come to me in pieces over the years, whether it was through like ceremony or other things that were going on. And my mom sat me down and she's like, I didn't tell you this, but, at 18 months you were molested. And I was like, what? Like, I was blown away. I was like, why are you telling me this now? Like, I didn't remember. I didn't need to know that. But then I had to sit with it and be like, okay, there's a reason, that I've come to this point and she's sharing this with me. And then it was just a lot of stories that would come through either from family or from like her of like all the things that had happened to me. I remember my aunt telling a story where my mom was so frustrated because I was crying and my aunt was a nurse and my aunt just told her to let me cry it out. So they put me in my snowsuit and put me in my stroller and put me out on the balcony to scream by myself. So like I look back and of course I have so much empathy and compassion for my young self because it was lonely. You talk about your podcast is about loneliness. Like literally I was experiencing the most incredible amount of loneliness amidst what should have been, like welcome to earth. Here's your parents. My dad wasn't in the picture because he was abusive and my mom had run from him. So I didn't have my father. And then this was what was happening with my mom. And then eventually it would get to the point where, fast forward years later, she would put me in foster care on the weekends, my sister and I, because my sister came along because she just needed a break. And there were things that were happening, inside those foster homes, like things I saw, things I heard, the way I was treated. And then it got to the point where we got to one of those canon events. And one of those canon events was the fact that I was molested by someone when I was involved with the Big Sisters Association. And it was the first time that my mom actually believed me. Because I lied a lot when I was young to save myself, to like fit in, to like please and perform because I needed my mom to love me. And I figured I had to learn, like I had to learn to earn her love. So when she believed me for the first time and she understood, I was telling the truth. And that was one canon event that I was like, okay, I'm alone, but like she sees me a little bit. Then we fast forward to the next canon event in my life where my mom met someone and she wanted to get married. And I didn't like him. From a young age, I read people very well and his energy, I was just like, no, 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 no. But she wanted this, so that's fine. So we went through a lot of abandonment. Like she would go to his house and leave us alone on the weekends with me and babysitting my sister. And I wasn't allowed to go outside. I wasn't allowed to be a kid. I wasn't allowed to do any of these things. So I got really mad and I wrote a letter, like just a scathing letter of like, how could you choose somebody else over me? What is going on? Why is this happening? I hate you. And I very quickly was like, oh, I need to get rid of this because she had a history of going through my room. So I was like, if she finds this, she'll probably kill me. So I grabbed a lighter and I lit the letter on fire. I opened up my window and I threw it out. It was raining at the time. So I got rid of it. And like my mom's like a bloodhound. So she was in her room with her best friend because it was the night before her wedding. And she comes barreling into my room and she literally just like beats me. Like picks the mattress up, slams me against the wall, accuses me of setting the house on fire because this is where we're at now, right? Like there's no me explaining to her. It doesn't matter what I say to her at this point. I was trying to light the house on fire. So that was a huge one for me because then I learned that it wasn't safe to have feelings. It wasn't safe to, express myself. And even when I tried to explain to her what was going on and what I actually did, it wasn't safe now. So now I'm 13. Okay. that night she calls her husband that she's about to, or whatever, her fiance that she's about to marry the next day. And they decide that I have to stand at the wedding in front of my whole family and pretend nothing is wrong. But the plan was that on Monday, once the wedding was over, CAS would be coming to pick me up and taking me away. And they had already arranged that. So I stood at my mother's wedding. And that's where I learned performance.
Mm.
Because I had to be okay so that my grandma didn't know what was going on or my family didn't know what was going on. And I had to pretend that everything was okay. And man, did I do that well. I smiled. I stood there. I did what was asked of me. And then the next day, I got taken away. And in all of that, okay, I was terrified. I was lonely. And now I feel even more lonely because now my family doesn't even want me.
Of course.
Right. So you see these canon events, like I said, and I'm giving you context because these things have led me to the point where I understand myself more. I understand where I get a lot of the behaviors. And listen, women, we've talked about this. Women have those behaviors. It's people pleasing. It's performative. It's, you know what I mean? Don't be too loud. Don't, hide your emotions. You're okay. So when I went to CAS, they put me in foster care. I ran away a lot because I didn't want to be there. And then that's where life got really, really tough in terms of now I was actually alone, like physically. I was already mentally and emotionally alone, but now I was alone physically all the time. And I was being treated poorly by a lot of people. When I got to the next Canon event, and this ties into kind of what I was expressing with the last Canon event, was my mom, amidst all that stuff that was going on, because I was being treated poorly, there was a lot of stuff going on with the group homes and things that I was being put in. I was terrified. I was always calling her, asking her, begging her to come home, because even though that was bad at home, it was better than what was going on for me. So my mom got really, really, really upset. She let me come home. Things went bad, like they were going to, and she wanted to kill herself. And this time when she wanted to kill herself, the direct correlation that was given to me was, I want to kill myself because of you.
My heart is
And
breaking. So many pieces
it
for the
was, it
little
was
girl.
hard. It was hard. And, I still, obviously, even though I've done a lot of work, I can still let myself grieve that, because it's such an intense moment in my life of being a canon event that, yes, it's led me to where I am. But man, like, I, I go back and I just watch that little girl in that moment of just realizing, like, the weight and the gravity of thinking that you were responsible for somebody else's life or death. And that canon event rocked my world. There were many other canon events, but I don't want to go into everything. I know there will be times where I will open up my story in other ways and I'll talk about the rest of it. But there's one other canon event that got me kind of to that point. Okay. Well, two. One with my mom was, she, in my 20s, after I'd had my daughter Liliana, I had her when I was 18. She tried to attempt suicide again. There was something to do with a relationship that she was in. And I remember at that point, I was still mad. Let me be very clear with you. So when I raced down to her apartment, when I got the call from my sister ran in and grabbed me at work, and we sped down to Hamilton. And I went to her apartment, and the paramedics were getting her into the wheelchair because they couldn't use the bed in her apartment. I literally started marching right towards my mom, and the paramedic looked at me and he was like, "Oh," and I was going to slap her, because I'm just like, how dare you do this when I just had my daughter? Like, what is the matter with you? What's wrong with you? So the paramedic at that point is like, "I don't think it's safe for you to ride in the ambulance with her." And I'm like, "I don't think it is either. I'll meet you at the hospital." So I get to the hospital, my grandparents come, there's, things that happen. I calm down and I start to sit with that, of what's going on. Cause it's happened, many times in my life. And my mom says to me as she's coming to, she says, "Oh, I failed again." And the way she said that, That was the first time that I saw a glimpse of her soul. Not that I accepted the full picture, but I saw a glimpse of it because I was able to say with how she was radiating what she was feeling and how she was expressing it that she really didn't want to be here. Like her soul was kind of wanted to just, this is the end of my story. I'm good. And when she realized it wasn't, she was so upset. And I remember this conversation, and I'll always remember it to my dying day. I looked at my mom and I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you're here still and that hurts you so much. And she started crying and I said, you know, Mom, if you really don't want to be here when you get out, I'll help you. I'll do whatever it takes. If you want me to buy you pills, whatever you want. I just want you to be at peace. And I didn't say that from an angry place. I said that from a place of pain and empathy and compassion of understanding where she was at and how she was feeling. And because I knew those own feelings in my soul because of all the things that I had been through that far in my life, I understood what she was saying. Because I've always had this feeling that I wanted to go home. And I could never tell people what home was. And then when I was in ceremony at some point, I was doing a psilocybin ceremony and I found home. I was like, I don't want to come back. I want to stay there. And the practitioner was like, no, 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 you need to come back. So like, I just was able to put all those things together and just say to her, like, hey, if this is what your soul truly wants, like, let's make a plan. Thankfully, when she got to the hospital, she had no recollection of any of that conversation. So that didn't be, that wasn't a thing after that. And then lead me to the next canon event, which is the one I shared with you originally with my mom, is that, you know, she did it again and it was based on a personal relationship. And then that's when I saw her soul. And, you know, sitting, like I said, in her house and just being able to tell myself and look at her and just be like, wow, you know, sometimes we choose, and I'm going to say this like so carefully because I know that some people are sensitive to this, but I have learned my truth is sometimes we choose a path like that because we need the lessons in it. And I was able to sit with that and understand that. I can now look at the fact that I showed up for my mom's soul. I was here for a reason. Those things didn't happen by accident. They happened for me, not to me. Because now I'm sitting here in front of you and I sit in front of my clients and I'm with my friends and the people around me and I can see them. And I don't mean see them, I mean see their soul and talk to them in the most authentic way that I know how, which is soul to soul.
There's so many elements of your journey that, and I know that you haven't even shared 10% of it. However, what really, the image that's coming to mind right now is like, as a soul, we choose our bodies, right? And this body becomes that performance, that's that physical appearance so that someone else can see us.
Yeah.
But throughout life and throughout experiences and throughout the mud that we go through, we literally pick up mud of an experience, if you will, and we slap it on top of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, we are so full and big of mud all around us that you can't see. That becomes that performance, that becomes that longing of love, that becomes that approval seeking, like, tell me I am good, tell me I am loved, tell me I'm seen, not seen as my physical body, but truly seen in my soul,
Mm-hmm.
and that I am deserving
Mm-hmm.
to be belonging to you, that I deserve to belong here with you.
Mm-hmm.
But when we don't get all of that, because it is a basic human need, are two things. One is feeling safe, and the second one is belonging. You'd got none of them. So the foundation was never there. And now, on top of that, with the foundation missing and going through all of these experiences that you went through, Literally, it becomes a big blob of mud all around you to protect yourself. And even the person who is screaming and who's showing up in a certain way is it's all still that mask,
Mhm.
hoping and praying someone will not see the hurt girl inside.
Or sees the hurt girl and wants to show up authentically and ask you the questions that really need to be asked, right? Like I find it fascinating in that way where it's like, I can admit to this fully. And I think, if anyone is watching that I've ever been either involved in friendships or in other capacities, relationships, um, you know, I'm so sorry for the way that I showed up for the first, 20 years of my life. It was muddy, it was dirty, it was hairy, and just like this beast that was created, right? And I do believe in the saying to some extent that hurt people because I think that's a thing. Like my truth of that is that because I was hurt so much and I had no, like you said, no foundation, I wanted to be loved. I sought approval. And when I didn't get it in the way that I wanted it when I was younger, I would kick, scream, yell, fight, whatever it was, because I was just that was my inner child going like, but no, we want this. Like I'm throwing a tantrum at that point. Like I want this. Like you need to give this to me. And I regret that, looking back. A lot of people like to say like I don't ever want to have regrets. I do. And I think it's important to make amends with people, and say sorry for the effects sometimes that you can have on people. And I am sorry for the people that I affected in my life that saw that messy, dirty version of me. But then there's another side of me that also goes, okay, but they saw that messy, dirty version, and instead of leaning in, they got defensive and angry towards me, even though they knew some of my story, even though they knew some of the hurt, even though they knew my mom, some of them, and saw the things that I would go through or hear the things that I went through. They didn't lean in. They got mad. And I can't blame them in that sense because a lot of times we don't learn how to deal with anger in life or conflict. It's
Mhm.
like conflict avoidance is the name of the game, right? So when you see someone being angry, you either do one of two things. You either attack back or you run and hide from it and shut down, right? But all that to say is that, like, I started to realize, like, why can't you lean in? Why can't you understand how much pain I'm in? Like, I don't know how to help myself. I'm doing the best I can with what I have. Like, Creator, give me something. And that's when it was kind of that journey of going out into the desert. Not that I actually went out to the desert, although I would love to do that. Going into the desert and having that kind of some people call it ego death, some people call it like coming of age. Like to me, it doesn't matter what it's called. It was the journey of my soul of starting to come back to myself and starting to find pieces of myself and bring them back in. In shamanic work, we talk about that as like being soul retrieval. Sometimes we leave pieces of our soul outside of ourself, and it's our job in this lifetime to kind of like bring those pieces back in. And I started grasping so hard for that. I started searching within myself to the depths. I did a lot. I sat with medicine a lot, not in terms of a silver bullet, because I never thought going into a ceremony, this is going to be the one that cures me. In fact, I think if you're, really honest with yourself in medicine, people are really honest these days. They'll tell you that, like, yeah, you're not going in there to like be healed all of a sudden. You're actually going in there to dig through the mud, to clean out the mud, like you refer to, right? You're going to start digging at it. And what are you going to see? And oh, the discomfort. I think that's why a lot of people get scared, about ceremony, is because it's what they're going to find that
Mhm.
they're worried about. And then the integration work would come after where I'd bring a piece of my soul back in and I'd be like, okay, okay, what's this new piece of me telling me? And those pieces would be like, okay, you deserve love. And I was like, what? Whoa, where, what? I deserve to be loved? Okay. Okay, let's work with that. And then in one ceremony, I remember the most beautiful feeling, and I can't even use words to describe it that would actually do it justice. Okay.
Mhm.
I had such a profound feeling because I had said to the universe, please, in this ceremony, can you please just show me what unconditional love is? Because I don't know what it is. I've never felt it. I don't understand it. And if you can just give me a little bit of that feeling, then I can take that feeling and probably cultivate something from that. And I remember sitting there and this wave passed over me of the most beautiful and profound love. of just being wrapped in this like warmth of just knowing that I mattered, that I was seen, that I was heard, that I was held. And man, that blew my mind because I was like, that's part of my personality is if I'm such a deep feeler, people say empath all the time. I just want to say this on the podcast so I can get it out there. Empaths are born of trauma. A lot of people think it's like, this special gift that you get handed. No, you forge that in the fire of going through trauma. So that's what allows you to strengthen your empath skills is because you learn to be a feeler because you understand that feeling is truth instead of what people say out of their mouths. So it was just that extreme amount of like empathy and love and just being encompassed in that. And then the integration work that came with that was like, can I can I remember that feeling? So I locked that feeling inside myself, okay, to carry it with me out of the ceremony. And then I had to do the integration work. And that is the ugliest part of ceremony is the actual integration work of coming out and going, oh my God, I was giving something so profound. How do I translate that into this world? So it was a lot of sitting with myself and feeling love for myself.
And that's key. Because even earlier, when you're like apologizing and saying a sorry from your heart, you
Mm.
can only say it when you have sat with yourself and said it to yourself first.
Yes. Yeah. And that was a big thing, right? Like, because in my story, I didn't know what I was supposed to own and what I wasn't supposed to own because a lot of it was handed to me and I didn't understand, right? What was mine and what was others.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a very specific journey that everyone goes on. And there's never, this world is so black and white, right or wrong, yes and no, that there is no integration, I find.
Yeah. Oh, you're so correct. Like, I think that's the piece though, right? Like, I think of the saying that somebody said the other day. I love podcasts. Like, I'm a junkie when it comes to that stuff. So, and I'm just so grateful to be here in this podcast with you. It's something so profound I heard the other day where somebody said, if God was really smart, and if you want to call God creator, universe, whatever you want to call it, where would he hide himself? So we may or may not find him. He would hide himself inside of us because we never look inside. And when I heard that, I probably butchered a little bit, but like when I heard that, I was like, whoa,
Yep.
that is insane. And then with that is like you said, it's the integration. Because here's the integration. This is the part that blows my mind. The integration work, okay, you can do integration work and healing and therapeutic spaces and things like that. But the actual integration work is how do I integrate my soul in the meat suit that I have? And then how do I integrate my soul and my meat suit into the world, even when it feels wrong or even when it feels dirty, muddy, messy, angry, all those things. And that is the deepest integration work that you're ever going to do in your life is to understand how to let your soul be seen and how others to be souls and be seen.
Oh, totally. And there, in your journey, there's such a beautiful, beautiful bliss of knowledge because what I have seen, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Nadine, but really, truly, what I'm taking from your story here is, and I'm saying story very loosely. It's literally a life journey.
Mm.
Is not only did you see and put on the mud all around you to protect yourself because the foundation was missing.
Mm-hmm.
You eventually had this epiphany of seeing a soul and not the role of a mother.
Mm-hmm.
With that experience, you came to a profound acknowledgement of, okay, what does this really truly mean to me now?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't unsee what I saw.
Yeah.
And you went on a journey of, quotes, healing,
Mm-hmm.
where it was like, okay, let's see what we can figure out. And if that's ceremony for one person, that's perfect. If that's something else, if that's therapy, if that's coaching, if that is a retreat, whatever it is for you.
Mm-hmm.
When you go into these places, the very first thing you're actually doing is you're allowing yourself to see the mud.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also like not even just seeing the mud, but I think like what's interesting what you just said is that like I saw her soul. So then when you think about that, if you think about the fact that we're all mirrors to each other, then that would have been the first time I actually would have seen my own soul at the same time,
Correct. Correct. Absolutely
right?
correct. And the epiphany is people say they want healing, and they will even bring all the courage together to make that first step. But the thought behind it is, okay, I'm going to cure it once and for all. I'm going to take care of this once and for all. And when they step into the room, it's like, oh, I actually have to share things. I actually have to be vulnerable, be authentic, and actually be present in this moment, not think about the past or the future in this moment, right here, right now.
Mhm.
And it becomes uncomfortable.
Oh, it's incredibly uncomfortable. We run a space at Capillary where we have support groups. That's how we started. Nelson actually started with just support groups for men, from born from his own experience with his own hero journey, and it's just crazy to me because, when you create those spaces, everyone's uncomfortable coming in because you got to remember, like, our ancestors sat in tribes. They would have sat around fires and talked to each other. They would have been there, shown up, seen each other, and like now we're fighting to have to do those same things so that we don't feel separated or divided. And, we started the women's about 6 or 7 weeks ago now. And when those women first came in, God bless their souls for showing up for themselves and just being in that space for each other. But man, there's a lot of nerves. You're now looking at everyone going, "Oh my gosh, am I going to be judged? Are people going to like think that I'm crazy?" And like the answer to that, and I know this is just my personality, is yeah, people are going to probably judge you, but you know what? Like authenticity is not based on whether someone's judging you. Authenticity is based on you. Like I try to teach people. I heard this the other day that they did this experiment with a Faraday cage and they stuck people inside of it and they were trying to measure the frequency of like emotions for humans. And they found that the highest frequency was not love, not joy, not anger, not any of that. It was authenticity, which blew my mind because I was just like, whoa. I'm like, that is amazing. And it just felt beautiful because there's such a great tie in. Like, I teach a workshop called Heart, and it's honesty, authenticity, integrity, resoluteness, resiliency, and transparency. Because what I'm trying to give people is a practical roadmap to create those values for themselves because we have forgotten what those are. And collectively, oh, collectively, but personally, what does it mean to be authentic? And, I have to say, I'm so full of gratitude, of being in the position that I'm in to be able to sit with people. Because one of the things that I recognize in myself is that when I show up in my authentic self and that's just who I am now as a person. Like I don't have masks. I don't hide. Everywhere I go, I'm the same person. You know what you're going to get from me. But what's interesting to me is that my authenticity and the frequency of what I'm putting out, the highest compliment I've ever received from many people is that, man, like, it's so nice to sit with you because, like, I just feel like I can be myself.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I went through everything that I went through in my journey so I could learn how to be myself, so I could create space for other people to be okay with being themselves.
And this is the overflow. This is the overflow that you're living every single day.
Yeah.
And even the thought of anyone thinking, am I going to be judged? Is literally your little girl inside of you saying, are you going to judge me?
Yeah. Are you going to hurt me? Are you going to see me? Are you going to love me? Are you going to appreciate me? Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm getting chills. We have a little podcast ritual on this, and I would love to ask you a question that the previous guest has left. And it's
Ooh.
such a fitting question. I can't wait to hear what you're going to say.
All right, let's hear it.
The question I have for you is, can you remember a time you followed your intuition and it enhances the trajectory of your life?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, thank you to the person before me. That's so fitting. You're right. I mean, trying to think of like one example, but what's interesting about my life is that's been my life. of like following my intuition and learning to actually listen to my intuition instead of listening to all the voices outside of me.
Mhm.
So I think my answer would be this is that there have been so many moments in my life where I fought really hard to listen to my intuition, not argue with it, and let it lead me. And every single time I have done that, it has enhanced my life tenfold. But I can tell you this piece. So how I got to capillary is this is I was on mat leave and I wasn't doing much. Nelson Borges had put a Facebook post up in Burlington together. I'm pretty sure it was. And he was just like, hey, does anyone have any experience with like nonprofits? I'm just trying to start one. Just want to kind of understand it. And I was like, oh, I'm like, I have time. So I messaged him and I was just like, hey, I could sit down with you. We can have a coffee. Like, I'm not interested in gaining anything from it. Like, let's just share some knowledge. So we talked and we talked and then we met at a Tim Hortons and, you know, I trusted my intuition. I trusted creator that I was going to answer that call and that call was going to lead to something. And now I'm sitting here, you know, it's over a year later, and I'm the executive director of the women's side of Capillary. So, I mean, if that's not following my intuition and enhancing my life, then I'm not sure what is.
Now you are actually not fighting the intuition. You are actually allowing the intuition to lead you.
Yes, and not being afraid of it. Because I think what ends up happening for people in this circumstance, and I just want to leave people with this little nugget, is that, you know, everyone's like, oh, trust your instincts, trust your instincts, trust your instincts. But like, trust your instincts. Like, when you get that feeling in your body that something's either an F yes or an F no, you have to trust that. Because what are you telling your body? What's the message that you're telling your soul and your body if you're not leaning into that? Right?
Yeah, totally. I love that note of wisdom of making the listeners really truly sit with what is in resonance to them.
Yes. And I just want to say this because you did say it earlier, and I did want to honor this. So, there's so many modalities that I've used in healing. I bring up ceremony a lot just because that has been a good catalyst for me and my personality and my truth. But I just want to be honest and just say to the listeners that it has been an all-encompassing journey of, like, sometimes I was just sitting in nature. Sometimes I was just listening to a brook babble. You know what I mean? Like the river run. Like, sometimes I went to psychotherapy. Sometimes I went to, you know, CBT. Like, there were so many different modalities they used. And I just wanted to leave the listeners with that because I think sometimes, you know, we look at medicine sometimes as being that silver bullet. And I don't want to leave that impression. I think it's a beautiful experience for people, but everyone comes to healing in their own way. And that's okay.
I love that you mentioned that. My journey has been completely different in
Mm,
that and everyone's journey is going to be different, mind
mm,
you. Like everyone's going to have their own unique journey. And there's no right or wrong. It just is. Trust what is calling you and leave behind which isn't.
mhm. But in that also, Matina, is that like, how do you, and I guess this is a little bit of a question for you. So, how do you, because in the middle of that is fear. So how do you maneuver that?
So a little bit about my own journey in that regard is I have not sat in ceremony. I have not done ayahuasca. For me, what has called me deeply is breath work,
Mm,
is journaling, is community. I
mhm,
have found amazing, amazing tribes and people around me that just were on the same path as me, not
mhm,
on the same journey, but same path as me,
mhm,
and that we were vulnerable enough to really lead each other home.
mm.
And I have an amazing mentor. I like she is such a pure love bubble. And with her, it is always about let's discover what's coming up. And it goes through meditations, it goes through deep inner work, it goes through sitting with that thought and meditating about it and writing about it and screaming it out, walking in nature,
Mhm,
sitting by the water and just allowing the thoughts to come out.
mhm. Yeah. And that's truly a place of peace and understanding and integration and reckoning, right? I think it's really beautiful what you said, actually. And I love this saying is like, we're all just walking each other home. And that's literally what's happening, Is that what that's what we're doing? Is we're allowing each other to grow to the point where we can actually go back home again, right?
And this is exactly why this podcast is what it is, because it's allowing people's experiences, as raw and as honest as they are, to be heard by those who are on a journey of seeking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm so grateful, Nadine, for you to open up parts of your life which can be very triggering. And for those who felt triggered by them and still are listening to this point, thank you for trusting yourself enough to listen till the end.
Yes.
And if there's anything inside of you that is still triggered by it, find yourself the help and support that you need. If that's you reaching out to Nadine, if that's you reaching out to me, if that's you reaching out to a charity that you know that can help you, whatever it needs to be for you, go to therapy, whatever it is, find yourself that support system and do the work.
Yeah. And I just thank you everyone for listening, and I echo that. If I did trigger you, I would pray that you would use that as a way to dig deeper and to know yourself more. And if you do need support, there's so many beautiful supports out there in the world. Allow that to be your catalyst or your canon event to growth if you feel triggered. And I'm honored to share my story. So thank you, Matina, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I am so grateful, Nadine, and it's been a pleasure and it's been an honor. I thank you really, truly, from my heart to yours, to being so authentic and being and sharing this so beautifully in a way that it's not in blame, it's not in shame, it's not in he did, she did. It really, truly is coming from, I grew from those experiences. This is who I am, and I get to see not only myself and honor myself, I actually get to truly see the clients I work with, the people I get to know, get to come across with these divine interventions that we go through. I know I feel that way when I met you. So it's just a beautiful synergy of how the world is playing out right now and how we are leaning into it. So thank you so much. Anyone who feels inspired, in the description below, reach out to Nadine. You have all the information there. And I want to thank you and honor you for tuning in. This episode has helped you to feel less alone in finding tools towards a life which is overflowing with love and purpose. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us to reach more individuals who are seeking healing and personal growth just like you. And don't forget to take a screenshot and share your aha moments on your Instagram stories and tag me, Matina. See you next week. Take care.